Henry, and it's an honor and privilege to speak with you. Thank you so much for coming on Popternative.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. We're talking about this Western film, High Ground, and I find it interesting because there's been a lot of genres like horror movies and westerns that have always been around, but there's been these kind of pockets of popularity, right? These surges of interest in the genre, specifically Western. So, what's that like working on a Western at a time where there is a big kind of like interest in them all of a sudden, so to speak?
Well, this is kind of it's a classic Western kind of framework, but
Yeah.
but it's a more modern take on it. We're no, there's no horses or train robberies or anything, but yeah, it's great. I love the Western genre myself. If I could make Westerns all day long, I would.
Yeah, absolutely. I find it interesting because I guess this is my filmmaker hat coming out because I also make films as well. But it's like you get a script, right? You get this world, right? And you just mentioned this is like a different world than like a no horses. This is a different kind of take at it. One can make an argument with Westerns. What's that script to screen like journey for you? Like, what's it like reading this stuff and then seeing it come to life while you go into production? I'm curious about that.
Well, I mean, obviously, if if you have a bit of experience in the film world and stuff, you can kind of visualize like what they can do, and you can make kind of educated guesses like, okay, well, they don't have any money, so
Yeah.
it's going to look like this, or they do have some money, and maybe we can do some, uh, there are a lot of factors that go into it. So I think ultimately it comes down to the story, comes down to the characters. If you can have uh, the best of both worlds, which are, very intriguing characters in a world that, in a story that you just want to see what's going to happen. Um, it's a lot of fun. And James Bamford, the director, he came from a stunt background, so
Mhm.
the action sequences are kind of his forte, and it was a lot of fun because I don't normally get a chance to do a lot of that.
Yeah.
um, I'm usually the guy getting shot, or I'm in the courtroom or something.
Mhm.
uh, so this is a lot of fun.
It's interesting too because I guess it depends on the project and the pace of it and the people you're working with. But I feel like the conversations that happen, whether they're like while you're filming or a couple of weeks before production, really interest me, right? So like for this film, were the conversations that you were having with James versus the conversations you were having with like cast similar, different? Like I'm wondering what the conversations were like before you actually went and like rocked it, like did this thing, so to speak.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a little talk about characters, and the vision of the piece, and how he was going to approach it. And it's very straightforward, but I really like that because it is in that vein of you know the a Western,
Yeah.
like a standard kind of, this is the plot, and I'm the outlaw in the jail cell, you know. But the thing about the character that attracted me was that, without his faith or his oath to kind of do something for his daughter, um, he would have just been a rat,
Yeah.
and it would have been a totally different dynamic. Instead, it kind of gives him a air of nobility, in the sense like he's resigned himself to death. He's going to go in, guns blazing, to do the right thing if he can, and he's just praying that he can get to that moment,
Yeah.
and that, to me, made it worthwhile, because otherwise he's a guy cowering in a cell and sniveling and saying, "You got to get me out of here," and
Yeah.
nobody cares.
Well, I find it interesting because what you're bringing up is a lot of kind of like what people think about the character. What are they thinking about what's going to happen with him in the story, and like how is it going to end, and how is he going to resolve? Is he going to live? If he's going to die? Like I feel like
Yeah.
all those things. So I'm wondering. I know the answer to this is you try not to do this, but given that you kind of set it up where when you're watching it as a viewer, right, you have all these questions and you're dialed in with this tension-driven Western thriller. Are you ever conscious of the audience member watching High Ground while you're making it? Or is that something that happens a little bit more when you wrap up, so to speak?
No, I'm always thinking of that, because because I'm one of those guys that when I watch a movie or something, and you know they
Yeah.
like run past a guy. I'm like, pick up the gun,
Yeah.
get, search him, get his radio. And so if there's ever a moment, like, you know what I mean? Like, don't
Yeah.
go in there.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a killer in there.
Yeah.
Like you have to think about that because, you can either talk the director into something more interesting,
Mm-hmm.
or you can make a comic moment of it because the audience is waiting for it,
I feel like that happens a lot in horror movies. I mean, you got to work on a like the Mike Flanagan universe, which is a little different, which is different horror, I feel like. But I feel like that whole kind of like kids go to a weekend getaway and then they open a door that they shouldn't have opened.
Yeah. Yeah. It's,
Yeah,
it's a little kind of life with blinders on, it's like, wow,
um,
look, this
I'm
persistent mold problem. Wow. Wow, I just can't get rid of it, huh? Guess I'll go back down to the hardware store.
I know. And then it's like, oh, you turn around and it's like, or it's just like the thing, like I love with horror movies. Do you like horror movies? Like you've worked in that job. Do you enjoy them as like an audience member?
Well, I think they can be really fun,
Yes.
but I think that it's kind of annoying sometimes because it's like, no matter what it is, right? And
Yeah.
you can use this formula on any horror movie. They build up. So act 1, build. Act 2, more character development, build. Act 3, totally illogically destroy acts 1 and 2, and bring it all crashing down, like maybe in a fourth act of a twist.
For
But
sure. Yeah.
but it, but it's all like it's this illogical kind of
Yeah.
exercise of creating an illusion and then utterly destroying it.
Isn't it
So
fun though sometimes when it's like you're introduced to like the van of like the 6 characters that are going somewhere and then you're like who's gonna survive this guy, like you know what I mean, who's gonna
yeah, well, I mean, that is the fun thing, it's just crazy. I mean, luckily, like we got all of the scripts
Yeah.
on those series, so
Yeah.
we kind of knew what was happening, but
Mhm.
but I feel really sorry for like the guys who are like, they're getting their scripts piecemeal and, they like really believed in the stuff that they were reading first. And then they get like script 8 and, throw all that stuff out the window.
I mean, I'm a big horror movie because I'm a horror movie filmmaker too. I don't mess around with what I'm about to say. Mike Flanagan, like that show, like has one of the like the best jump scares ever. When Carla's in the car, that's like one of the best jump scares of all time, Henry, all time. Like it is.
It is, yeah. Well, he said he was going to do one. If he was going to do one, he was going to do it really, really well.
Scared the crap out of me. Like I like
yeah, it was a good one. It got me.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to ask you this too, because it's interesting. Whether you're a filmmaker or, a musician or a fan, right? There's always these moments where, you put on a song, right? And people are like, ooh, this reminds me of Metallica, or this reminds me of Lady Gaga, right? Like the sound of it, right? Or you watch a movie and it's like, oh, this reminds me of this movie. This is paying homage to this movie, right? You know what I mean? And there's a lot that come to mind. I'm wondering if you think about this at all, but what is it like being part of like a world where you're like the movie that people like, if there's a crop of like 5 or 10 movies that people always reference or go to right away, is E.T., like a movie that you were part of? Do you think about that a little bit? Like anytime you watch something that has to do with aliens or friendship, not having to do with sci-fi, just friendship, people go back to E.T., say it reminds me of E.T. Do you think about that at all? Because that's an amazing thing, man, honestly.
Oh yeah, no, I do think about it because, I've appeared in close to or a little over 100 projects, as an actor. And, there are probably 4 films that people can list off that they remember me from, and E.T. was a worldwide phenomenon. So, that's a very rare thing. And it's still the 4th highest grossing film in history.
Every time I watch a movie, like it's one that comes to mind where I'm like, this has ET vibes, right? And it's like you look at something like Stranger Things, and like Stranger Things really like kind of paid homage to ET and everything. And I just think like that's a small list, man, of movies. You know what I mean? If you think about it, right?
Yeah, it is. And you know, it takes a number of things to get on that list, you know, and it's a certain amount of magic and timing, you know.
Absolutely. And then, you know, High Ground's going to be available digitally March 18th. And last question before we wrap up on that. Whether you mentioned, you know, you've worked on like hundreds of movies and everything. There's always going to be learning experiences, right? What, like, no matter what, right? On certain sets, even if you've been on a set one time or thought like hundreds of times, right? So I'm just curious for High Ground from a storytelling acting perspective. What were some learning experiences for you as an actor that you'll be able to take to future projects, specifically at High Ground? Like anything stand out learning experience wise on this Western?
Oh, sure. I mean, you know, like I said, I don't get a lot of opportunities to play kind of action,
Yeah.
you know, action-based characters or tough guys, right? So this was a lot of fun for me, and there's a certain, you know, stillness and a certain, you know, cadence to the delivery and things like that that you kind of pick up on, where you realize like, you know, I'm another color on the palette in this thing, you know, and it's a simple palette, but it's important that those colors are represented. So, you know, hopefully you're learning every day, you know, I mean, or trying to,
Mhm.
you know, just in life anyway. But like when you're on a set, when I'm on a set, like, yeah, I'm always picking things up.
Absolutely. On available digitally March 18th. That's High Ground, thrilling new Western they could check out. You're great in it. Congratulations. Henry, it was an honor and privilege to speak with you. Thank you so much for your some time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.